Brother teacher here. I had a couple gentlemen that asked me about the late great Bruce Lee's ability as it related to judo and grappling. More specifically, Mitch, I'm responding to you as it related to how good was Bruce Lee in grappling, and why does it appear as though there was not as much information. That's an emergency vehicle if you don't already know it in the background. And why there was not as much information on his grappling training and or skill available to us than it was with his other martial arts training, kicking and punching and so forth. And to Mark, another young man that wanted to know how well Bruce Lee would have done with his interaction, martial arts wise, that is, with legendary, and I will say legendary, uh, judo Gene Lebelle. Now, let me address this first. I am not here to discredit anyone. I'm saying in this particular video, I'm here in this particular space and time to give my viewpoint uh, related to Bruce Lee's grappling skill as it relates to him and other grapplers, perhaps. Uh, Judo Gene Lebelle. As a child in the martial arts, I have been hearing his name from a child up until the present, and I have watched him demonstrating judo. I've watched him doing groundwork before on video over the years, and he was legitimate. He was a legitimate judoka, and I have a great deal of respect for Gene Lebelle. However, I do believe that sometimes as men, regardless of what vocation we find ourselves in, sometimes we have a tendency to allow our egos to become a bit inflated. So we say things sometimes to garner followership, prestige, and more accolades than we actually deserve. I believe that Gene Lebelle does deserve the title of a judo master, hands down. Now, as it related to Bruce Lee and Gene Lebelle, I know Gene Lebelle appeared in some episodes of Bruce Lee's Green Hornet and Kato TV series back in the 60s. And he was a stuntman, Lebelle that is. And he had some interaction with Bruce Lee. I've heard Lebelle state in the video before that Bruce Lee trained under him. Uh, that I don't have any evidence of. I had never, in my study of Bruce Lee throughout my entire life, never heard Bruce Lee say he trained with Gene. Never heard that. It was Gene Lebelle who made the statement in the video that he was teaching Bruce Lee judo. I don't necessarily refute that. I believe that Bruce Lee would have learned judo from Gene on some level. But the greater of the two, as a martial artist, would have still been Bruce Lee. Okay, we'll stop there with that. Now, uh, Bruce Lee, according to Gene Lebelle, also came to one of Lebelle's classes, and Lebelle stated that Bruce Lee just wiped his students up, just in a sparring match per se. So I'll leave that there. Now, backing up to the original individual that asked me the question, this was Mitch. Uh, he said he had done an extensive study of Bruce Lee for some time, and he knew that Bruce Lee was legitimate, the real deal, according to him. And how is it that Bruce Lee didn't emphasize or show as much in the way of grappling as opposed to the other aspect of his fighting? Let me say this. We don't always see everything about an individual. Just because we don't doesn't mean that they are not proficient in that particular aspect of fighting. Bruce Lee studied and trained in martial arts for the whole time that he began in China until the day he died. We know that he was an innovator, he was a creator. He had over 2,000 books on various and all martial arts styles that existed. And he understood body mechanics, physiology, anatomy of the human body, and how it worked, positioning, footwork, and so forth. And he synthesized all of the things that he studied that benefited him as an individual, and he used them. We know also that Bruce Lee had extreme superior speed against the vast majority of people that he had ever had any encounter with in the martial arts. And that was one of the things that I believe brought sort of a quiet fear amongst other karateka, kung fu people, martial artists in general as it related to Bruce Lee. They were quietly afraid of him and his ability. Bruce Lee was a kind man. He was a man that had a temper. We know that. He was a man that was greatly uh, infused in his art. He knew martial arts inside and out. To have been on this planet about 32 years, Bruce Lee knew martial arts. So, again, uh, there's a question: was Bruce Lee's grappling sufficient, or was it enough? Who really knows if we have no evidence to prove how proficient Bruce Lee was in grappling? I personally believe, this is just my personal belief, because of how involved he was in the martial arts during the time that he lived, that he was adequate or sufficient in grappling because he studied the whole gamut of fighting from standing, as I say, to the ground. Now, I believe also that we would have not seen as much grappling with Bruce Lee as we would have in the striking aspect of the martial arts because Bruce Lee was indeed a kicker and a puncher. We know this just by virtue of watching his films and also watching him train with his students. And when you watch some of his literature and how he spoke on fighting. Now, it doesn't mean that his grappling has been diminished just because we see him striking. What I'm really trying to crescendo into is what makes a great martial artist. What makes someone great in the martial arts, and I'm speaking about Bruce Lee in this particular vein, is that he understood fighting. Now, here in the recent 15, 20 years, we have seen the advent of jiu-jitsu sort of spread throughout the world. The Gracies helped it out, and even though it existed way before the Gracie brothers did, but they helped it out in terms of its popularity. But Bruce Lee helped not only the Gracies out through him making martial arts popular throughout the world during the 60s and 70s. Bruce Lee helped many other arts out, period, because he was the catalyst that made martial arts popular not only in the United States or America, but in the world. If it was not for Bruce Lee, we probably would have never known who Steven Seagal was, who Jean-Claude Van Damme was, who Chuck Norris was, and who the Gracie brothers were, and who many other martial arts practitioners were, Jeff Speakman and so forth, and the list can go on, Ron Van Cleve, Jim Kelly, all of these other martial arts figures and practitioners, even Tony Jai in the more recent years. We probably would have never known of them in or on the level that they are on now as far as a international stage had it not been for Bruce Lee, because he made the way. He opened the path for all of these other martial arts to come to that floodgate. So again, when we look at Bruce Lee as a total martial artist, I believe he was. So you see a lot of people talking about how great grappling is and how this particular jiu-jitsu guy or Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy is so good in grappling and so forth, and they make the comparison of other people not knowing grappling. But let me tell you this, where the rubber meets the road, in all actuality, in all reality, there is no grappling if you're stopped before you can grapple. I'll let you marinate that in your mind for a moment. So when we talk about Bruce Lee perhaps not being strong in grappling, you have to put your hands on him first, and any other proficient striker. So what I have noticed and what I've gleaned over the past several decades is that most grapplers that I've seen can't strike. They won't strike. If there's another grappler standing in front of them, they have the same mindset, the same methodology almost, the same approach to taking the other person to the ground. But if you take that away, if you take them out of the octagon per se, if you take them out of the ring and you say, well, we're just going to fight, imano imano, I fear the striker. You know why? Because in order for you to grapple the striker, even if that's all they know is striking, kicking and punching and so forth, in order for you to grapple them, you have to put your hands on them. So if they're faster than you and they have another skill set as far as striking is concerned, and you're just a grappler, you're dead at the gates. Bruce Lee was that type of individual. You would be dead at the gates before you can even put your hands on him. That's just how proficient he was in striking and understanding the science of fighting. So yes, he could grapple. Yes, he was proficient in grappling. But 9 times out of 10, he would have never had to get to that point of grappling, because he would have hit you with a super speed in the very beginning from the outset. So I'm giving that credit to him first and foremost. You had to have put your hands on him, and most people could not touch him. I hope that this was adequate, and I hope that it answered the questions about Bruce Lee's ability in grappling. And to sum it up again, yes, I believe he was great in grappling. He was a total package. But at the end of the day, as it related to him, he was so fast, kicks and hand strikes, so powerful for his weight, you couldn't touch him. Not to say that he was invincible, not to say that he was superhuman, not to say that he was some sort of god. I'm not saying that. Not to say that he was someone that should have been idolized. He was not. But he was well deserved of his title. The king of kung fu, the king of the martial arts, and the greatest martial artist of our time. It's that simple. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I appreciate it. You take care.